This is a picture of my friend and colleague, Marjorie Woolacott. She's been on my podcast, so you can find that in the archives. She wrote this book, Infinite Awareness, about her awakening. She is a neuroscientist who had a spiritually transformative experience that let her know everything is consciousness. Everything comes from the one field of awareness. I reached out to her with questions about the brain, and she introduced me to a phenomenon that all of us have going on in our brain that was really eye-opening, and it's called the default mode network. I'd heard in the past that for human beings, ego is the default mode. We can want to have no attachments to things. We can want to not fear death, but there is this network of pathways of how the brain responds to stimuli that is a default mode. And it's not located in just one hemisphere. It goes back and forth, gives us that sense of self, and that's why ego is the default mode. But it's this program that's running over and over in your brain, and it's your default mode. But happily, you're not stuck with it. There are ways to go beyond the default mode and get more into the right brain. But this default mode network, as you can see here on the slide, it's the one that keeps your attention on self-referential narrative. That means the story of me. It keeps your focus on how awesome you are from patterns that you've been experiencing your whole life. It also restricts your sense of presence by constantly drawing you outward. That's why it's so hard to maintain presence and be aware. But with training, you can overcome that and be more aware and have more spacious awareness and notice when Spirit's talking to you moment by moment. You're overriding the default mode network and making new patterns in your brain. The default mode network that all of us have operating, a little bit different in every one of us, but has these things in common, confines awareness just to everyday life. So it's not going to be looking at big picture. It's not going to be worried about peace on earth. It's your everyday life. So can you see how the default mode network is helpful, but can get in the way of connecting with higher consciousness, with your own higher self? So it's blocking our awareness of our interconnectedness. This is why it's important, whether you're a medium, whether you connect with loved ones across the veil at all. How about right here, right now? This network that's at work in us explains why we don't have peace on earth. It's the program. We're hardwired this way. It takes effort to overcome it. But at the same time, what do they say? God doesn't create junk. There's a reason for this. By having this default mode network, we do work harder at awakening through trial and error. If the default mode is ego, then we learn from our mistakes. We learn from pain. We don't want to suffer anymore, and we grow by making choices that are beyond the default mode network. I really hope at some point in the next week, you'll go out and watch the TED Talk by this woman, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, Boltetayllor. We'll put a link in the description to this video when you get it. She's a neuroscientist herself who had a stroke. Her left hemisphere of the brain went offline as she had a brain bleed on that side of the brain. As a neuroscientist, she knew what was happening as it was happening. She watched the loss of one capability after another as it happened. As she was reaching for a phone to call for help, she lost the boundaries between her hand and the wall. Everything flowed into everything else. There was no me and the wall and the room and the furniture. Everything was just being. Everything was consciousness, but that doesn't help you make a phone call. So you can see how the left brain is necessary. She had enough faculties left to notice a card of a colleague laying beside the phone. She could pick up the phone with a little fumbling. This is all told in her book. My Stroke of Insight is the title of the book. She was able to match the pattern of a number on the card with the number on the dial of the phone and punched out the numbers. But by this time, she'd lost the ability to speak because that's a left brain function. Luckily, her colleague picked up the phone, heard her muttering her garbled language through the phone, knew it was her, knew she was in trouble, and called an ambulance. By the time she got to the hospital, she was just back to the babies who have no function, right? She couldn't speak, she couldn't walk, but she was aware, and she was aware she was in trouble. They were able to stop the brain bleed. She has regained all function, but is transformed spiritually as a result. Why? Because she experienced life through the right brain only, got rid of categories, got rid of judging, and experienced total oneness. You see how the brain blocks us from that, but we can learn to have moments of right brain more than left brain. Meditation is what does it for us. Meditation cuts out the external world, allows us to experience the spaciousness of pure being and come to understand I am more than this brain, more than this body. I hope that many of you, I can hear you having aha moments. That's why we meditate? Yes, to quiet the left brain and activate more of the right brain's functions, which we've already described why they're so helpful. So we reduce the default mode network's hold on us, and the sense of ego dissolves. Imagine we can do that now with meditation. Not as much as when we leave the body. Then, without that left brain, the gig is up. We remember who we really are. So when you override the default mode network, when you activate the right brain, you have a sense of unity and interconnectedness. And this is why we become so loving. This is why I can't help but love all of you. I have felt that unity. I sit in that oneness daily. Are you feeling it? Now you know what to do. Sip of the divine every day. Just 3 minutes of that will help result in a sense of unity and interconnectedness by bringing the right brain back online. And of course, that's going to increase your ability to connect across the veil. So just remember that. It's the program, but you're not completely stuck with it. We love the left brain. It does a great job. It is beautifully designed, but it is also a filter of consciousness. So what happens when we no longer have the brain? What do you think the spirit world is experiencing? Why did they say to me, my eyes have been open? Because they're no longer categorizing, judging, criticizing. They feel and experience the oneness. And this is why they're no longer judging you. They don't judge each other when we cross the veil. These are left brain programs. And without that brain anymore, there is this awareness. I am this. Love in full expression. I was it all along, but the brain was a filter. Now the gig's up for all of us. Once you really get to know this and work with the brain and work around the brain while we're here, buckle your seatbelt. Yeah. So you are awareness. You are aware and you are here simply being the expression of love. Everything else is story. The senses will absolutely fool you. Remember how I told you the left brain fills in the blank? Here's an example. Ty and I went for a bike ride in Texas on our travels this summer. Out in farm country, as you can see, here was one of the local residents. I was glad he was on the other side of the fence. So I wondered what other farm animals we would see. And off in the distance was this little guy. Wasn't quite sure what he was, so we got up close. Oh my gosh. Can you see? I'm going to go back one slide. Looks like a sheep or a calf. I don't know what it was, but I was sure that was an animal. We rode by and again, as I am always thinking, how can I teach mediumship more clearly? We got like a couple yards past, and I said, Ty, stop. I have to take a picture of something that just happened to me. And we had to back up so I could take this picture. That was this little thing right there. What happened there? The left brain told a story. It took little pieces of the puzzle. It allowed my senses, the objective visuals coming in my eyes, to say that's an animal, till I got up close and saw the rest of the story. So just be aware of the programs that are running. Reality is not necessarily what our senses are telling us. We are so much more. There's so much going on. I think today's Daily Way message talked about not realizing what is real. What is real is anything that arises in consciousness. Experience is happening all the time, and your experiences are very real. Do they teach you? Are they helpful? And are they healing? That's the question we should be asking. If you're giving a message to somebody from a connection across the veil, is it real? I certainly hope so. Is it healing? That's the point. The evidence helps us here in this reality. Those across the veil just want us to know through the right brain. Just know and not think. We are right here. But that brain is a filter, and every one of us is wearing filters with different lenses based on our experience, our culture, our gender, all of it are filters. And the left brain builds stories based on that. But once you remember it's the program, now you can work around it. All right? So realize that you are both the experiencer of this reality and the witness at the level of the higher self, the soul. And you can shift and learn to shift back and forth. With awareness, find the balance. That's the goal. Yeah, if you're at work, if you're in a situation that needs logic and analyzing, you want to turn up that right brain. But if you want to connect with a loved one, you want to activate the right brain and bring in more wisdom. That's why anytime you all ask questions of me, I shift to the guides. That's where the wisdom comes, and they speak to me through the right brain. So you always have a choice, door number 1 or door number 2, left hemisphere or right hemisphere, human side or soul side, or both. But be aware you have a choice. You're not stuck in the default mode. The good news is you're not stuck because of this concept that is now very real called neuroplasticity. You have the way that the neurons are used to firing in your brain, those networks. There are multiple networks in the brain. We've just focused on one. But through retraining the brain, you can create new patterns. So the Bible says, be as the little child. Go back to trusting, knowing, relying on that gut feeling. Notice when you're categorizing and judging and say, it's the program. Little babies love everyone. They see only oneness. There's no difference between where they end and you begin. We can do that and be that now. I love this quote from Rumi. Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. Words get in the way. We don't need words when we feel that oneness in the silence. So meditation is the way to activate the right brain, to work around and bypass the filters. Very quickly here. Where does the mind go when we let it go wherever we want? It goes to the default network, right? But with focus and intention, we can focus on right brain functions of simply being and knowing, who am I? And this is a beautiful thing because, as it says here, disruption in the default mode enables awareness of subtler perceptions that are normally filtered out. And what is the way your loved ones from across the veil talk to you? Through very subtle perceptions. You want to notice their presence, you need to disrupt the default mode. And we do that through meditative practices and practices of presence. You don't have to sit and say Om for 6 hours a day. You can practice presence just by going for a walk, by doing the dishes, many ways. So remember to breathe throughout the day, to practice your aha moments, the sip of the divine, and know that that is having an effect in balancing the two hemispheres of the brain. Researchers have shown that the default mode networks were deactivated for advanced meditators compared to those who had not been meditating regularly. And I'm a proof positive of that. Here's me being researched upon at the Institute of Noetic Sciences with Dr. Dean Radin, a very well-known scientist, plugging me into his computer. And I decided on my own to see if I could drop into the alpha brainwave state that's ideal for meditation. I didn't tell him I was doing it. I just took a deep breath with the intention to drop into alpha, and suddenly he turned a computer towards me to show me the screen, and he said, "Are you an experienced meditator?" And I laughed and I said, "Why do you ask?" And he said, "Because we haven't even started, and you're kicking out some really coherent alpha waves." Friends, that's from training and intention and commitment. I'm not special. My brain, I was going to say it works just like everybody else's, but my husband might disagree. But it's from the commitment to seeing how clear we can open up that connection. And clearly I got my ego out of the way to put this picture on there because that's pretty goofy looking. But it's just from living the awakened way, you know, educating yourself about things like this, how the brain gets in the way, then seeking the personal experience yourself through expanded states of awareness, non-ordinary states of awareness, and engaging higher consciousness for yourself. That's how to live a divinely guided life. But understand, meditation is not just relaxation. I went back to my friend Marjorie, the neuroscientist, Dr. Woolacott, and I said, "Tell me the difference between when we get relaxed with alcohol versus when we relax with meditation." Fascinating things she shared with me. When you drink alcohol, your networks that help you focus are reduced. You don't have as much focus. So that's why you have reduced inhibitions and may end up dancing on tables, right? When you meditate, however, with the intention to maintain a single focus, perhaps on the breath, perhaps on, I want to hear from my loved one. That's my sole focus over and over. Where are you? I'm here to sense you. Then the result is you actually activate other networks in your brain besides the default mode network, the actual attention networks, and you're able to notice the subtle vibrations of spirit. I love this. I call it 21st century spirituality, bringing the science in to the spiritual here. Now do you see why we emphasize meditation so much? Not only that, the fringe benefit is your happiness. I'm going to wrap this up with a really big thing I learned that just absolutely fascinated me. And it's called the happiness set point. We all have one. You know, you may have a set point with your weight. You'll always come back to that, and you can reset your set point lower if you need to. But you have a happiness set point, and you can look around and you know people that are always happy no matter what. I just interviewed Suzanne Ross, and she said growing up, her parents called her Susie Sunshine, right? She definitely had a high happiness set point. And then there are other people that you might call them a gloomy Gus because they're just not happy no matter what. And that could just be the way they're programmed. However, no matter what your happiness set point is, no doubt about it, you win the lottery, you're going to be happier for a while. And then an interesting thing they've noticed, even if you now have millions of dollars and have that home and the fancy car, you will come back down to your happiness set point. It loses its luster. Conversely, very interesting and hopeful for all of us, perhaps someone you love dearly dies. And I know that's happened to everybody here. And you know what that grief feels like. And you are not happy. And that could last a long time. But happily, because of this happiness set point, over time, most people will come right back to that happiness set point. unless you don't use the kind of tools that we teach you here. Learning that there's a greater reality helps us come back to our happiness set point more quickly, which is what those across the veil hope for us more than anything, right? But here's the good news. Meditation raises your happiness set point permanently. I'm going to say that again. The happiness set point will stay the same throughout your life, except for two things that you can do to raise it. One is meditation. You will be happier as a result of regular meditation. Why do you think that is? Because you get to feel who you really are and celebrate our interconnectedness and know I am love in full expression. And like it said on that slide, you are so very loved. And the second way you can raise your happiness set point, service to others. So if you're not feeling happy or feeling dissatisfied with life, find a way to connect and serve others. Many people who retire think it's wonderful for a while, all this freedom. And then suddenly they find a lack of purpose. What is my purpose in life? It doesn't have to be some big thing. Find a way to serve others, and your happiness set point will go up. So, wow, how was that?